Welcome to Rise Zion. Today we are interviewing my brother Seth about an experience he had while serving his mission in Rosario, Argentina. So why don't
Yes.
we get started off and just talk about what area you were in at the time and what was kind of a general time period and day that this took place?
All right. So, yes, as Ethan was saying, I served my mission in Argentina, Rosario. And this was actually a huge area. It wasn't just the city of Rosario. This actually took place in an area that was called Anacleto y Medina, which I think was like technically two cities like together, but we just always called them Anacleto y Medina. This area was unique in that it was in a different province. It was in the province of Entre Rios, so between the rivers. And as the name would suggest, there was a lot of rivers in this area, and including the great river Paraná, which is actually a branching river, I believe, that comes off the Amazon River. It's a very large river. For those of us who grow up here in the Western United States, we're not used to seeing these giant rivers like the Mississippi, for example. But these rivers are so big that freighter ships can drive up them and deliver goods to cities as they go up the river. So, I mean, these are huge rivers that huge boats can travel on. And that was one of the big features of this area. It was interesting. I think this area had the best empanadas in my mission. They were just crispy and had like a delicious flaky crust on
Well,
the outside.
you better explain what an empanada is.
Empanadas, yes. So empanadas are, for those of you who don't know what an empanada is, you should try them if you haven't. They are like a pastry of they're savory or sweet pastry, and they come stuffed with different things like meat or cheese and ham, or sometimes you could get like sweet squash in them. And then they were either baked or deep fried. And
Kind
these
of
ones,
like a little pie, right? Like a hand
yes,
pie.
yes, like a little pie. So it had like a pie crust, and then you'd fold it in half, and then you have your little empanada that you'd eat and enjoy on the go, or you know,
Pocket.
like a hot pocket. Yes, almost exactly like a hot pocket, except it was more delicious than a hot pocket
Mm.
and not disgusting.
What for the soul?
so so yes, I really I enjoyed this area in a lot of ways because like you could buy like fruit, like these giant pears, like you could buy produce like super cheap, and that was like everywhere in my mission you could do. But I just remember these giant pears in this area, and they were so big and juicy, and they were so good. And we do not have pears that size here, I don't think. But that was just something I remember. Another thing that I remember about this area was that I didn't feel particularly safe here. Argentina generally has had, I don't know how it is right now, but it generally had a lot more crime in Argentina than the United States. Even though it was that way, I didn't feel like particularly in danger, except for, in specific instances. In this area, I didn't particularly feel welcome.
Is like the stereotypical like sailor town. All the sailors come in on their boats. I don't know.
Actually, that's probably true. This town was very strange in that, so all of the roads were like a spider web. It was not in a typical grid pattern at all. So there's like a central park in the area, and all of the roads kind of branched off from this park radially. So it was like a spider web. And it was very confusing and it was very odd. This area also had, I believe, more practitioners of witchcraft. There is a particular brand of witchcraft in Argentina that's practiced that's called mucumbia. And you'd hear people, I don't know, like, I don't know the details of what it's supposed to be. I wish I had learned more about it just so I could talk more about it. But people would go out of their doors like every once in a while and ring bells. And there was this one intersection that we'd always pass by, and we'd walk up it. And on the dirt roads again, we'd walk up this dirt road, and we could see like I think that they would sit and wait for us. I don't know what they were doing, but they would like pour something out on the road in the intersection. I don't know if they're like trying to curse us or something. I don't know what they were doing, but
Would you describe the people there as like overly superstitious, just as a whole, like, or you know what I mean?
do they believe in
Like
witchcraft?
I kind of get the feeling like a predominantly Catholic, country would be very superstitious and wouldn't want anything to do with the occult
You
or
would think so.
like
You
witchcraft or stuff like
you'd
that.
think so, but this area had a high prevalence of this practice. Um,
Weird.
yeah, which was odd. And this happens everywhere in Argentina, but I think in this area is particularly prevalent. I think it was just my impression. I don't know if that's true. Anyway, so I guess we should just proceed to the story. I have a different story in regards to witchcraft that I'd like to tell later, but it's kind of like a side story. It's not like it just gives a general.
Missionary side quest.
Yes, it's a missionary side quest. Exactly. It's a missionary side quest, but it also kind of shows that there is an
There's so many of
opposition.
those.
This I kind of want this channel to be sort of like it provides evidence of the supernatural as well as mostly for God, but I want there, also to let it be known that there is an opposition. So we're not
Yeah.
just a fuzzy channel, where we talk about all the warm fuzzy feelings that we have. There is an opposition, and that is a real force. And I think that I don't know if I would characterize what they were doing as a superstitious practice. I think that they practiced it because they thought it worked.
Mm-hmm.
Just as a
and
point.
and just and as another point, if you are going to serve a mission, or if you have served a mission, you will know that as a missionary you face opposition more acutely than almost any other time in your life.
Yes.
It just there's just some, you just know there's an opposition, and there's a power trying to
Interfere.
like interfere with the work.
Yeah.
Yep. It just happens.
To that point, it was amazing how many people I would contact, and they'd say the exact same thing. They'd say, I'm sorry I can't come to the door right now, I'm showering, even though they clearly were not showering. And it was just this quirk that people had. They would say it automatically.
I can't come to the door, I'm sleeping.
I'm showering. No, it was I'm
No, yeah, I
I'm
know.
in the
I was just
shower.
saying.
But
I
like
just was saying that.
it got to the point
That
it
makes
would
you
happen like over and over and over again. And it's not like these people got together in the town square and said, what do we say when the missionaries come over? And they all unilaterally decided that, or like all together decided that that's what they were going to say.
You're
But
busy,
I
you're
don't know.
showering.
That's kind of anecdotal evidence, I guess, of the supernatural. Maybe people in some way are being influenced to say the exact same thing. I don't know, but it's kind of anecdotal. This story took place on the 2nd of April, 2011 in my mission, and I have this recorded in my journal, so it's accurate. There's some details I didn't write down, but I remember very vividly because of the experience that happened. So we were contacting in an area, and we had gone, I believe that we had gone to this area. It was closer to the river. I can't remember if that was north or south or what direction it was in the city, but it was nearer to the river. There was this big hill, so you'd have to walk up the hill and go all the way down the hill. And I think that we had been invited to a house to give a blessing of healing to a sister. And I don't think that she was a member. I don't even remember why we went there particularly, but I think it was because a member had invited us to give a blessing of healing. So we were there. We explained what a blessing of healing is. And then afterwards, I mean, it was a spiritual experience, but that's not the story. The story is that we were contacting in the area after, and there were across the street in the area some apartment buildings, and we started contacting those apartment buildings, and we discovered a woman who was named Sylvia, and we gave her to the first discussions. She had a son who was mentally handicapped. I believe that he was autistic, but it was clear to us that he had some issues. Every once in a while, we'd see him walking around in the town. Every once in a while. But so as we were teaching Sylvia, we learned more about her. She's very heavily Catholic. As we talked about, it's a very heavily Catholic culture in this area. So she was Catholic. She believed in the saints. She'd pray to the saints and everything. She didn't really progress very well. I don't believe that she was reading the Book of Mormon or anything to that effect. I think that she would just read it when we were there with her, basically. I think she accepted tentatively a baptismal date. And one time we stopped by, and she was just really upset, really distraught, because her son was not back home. And he had been gone for a very long time, and that was kind of distressing for her because her son was mentally challenged, And we'd see him around town sometimes, but I guess that he had been missing for a while, which is distressing for her. And so she had been praying that he would come back, that he would be okay. She was getting kind of worried. And so we kind of explained that we could give blessings of, how would you say it in English? Of consolation, blessings of consolation.
Comfort, I think.
Comfort. But, we weren't supposed to solicit blessings. And so we just kind of explained that we could give one. And then I think that she did ask us to give her a blessing as well. And it was just interesting because we had just given a blessing of health to somebody nearby, on a different date, but nearby regardless. But so we started, I had to give the blessing. So we lay our hands on somebody's head to give them a blessing. And as I was saying this prayer, I was saying, Heavenly Father is aware of you. And, all the, there's some things, there's typical things that you say. You try to say what the Spirit is inspiring you to say in that time. And then all of a sudden, I start to get this feeling. I think I've described that before, what the Spirit feels like. And I think it's important that we describe what it feels like so that other people can also recognize that when they feel it. It feels like this kind of warm feeling in your chest, like a swelling sensation that fills your heart. But it's not just a feeling, it's also things that come to your mind. And so it's particularly important to pay attention to what comes to your mind and your heart during these times. And
sometimes people call it pure inspiration, something that you normally wouldn't be thinking about, but just that comes.
Yes, it comes into your mind unbidden, like a voice even. And it's not typically always like a voice. Sometimes it's just thoughts that come to your mind. But in this case, it was like a voice for me. And I heard these words as I was giving the blessing to her, that I needed to say that in this moment, the words were, I wrote in my journal, that your son will come home now. And so I said those words, and there was this, and this is, I don't know if this is important detail, but there was this wind that kind of passed through the house. Typically the doors are open in Argentina because it's so hot. So this could have just been a natural wind, but it seemed odd to me that it happened at that moment. And then immediately after that, her son walks through the door and says, "Mom, what are you doing?" And we had, and we were just oh boy. So and we just stopped the blessing right there. So it was such a interesting experience. I recorded it. I bore my testimony in my journal. I know the church is true. All the details of what had happened. I don't know if the wind was particularly important, but reviewing the experience and reading the scriptures in Pentecost, I believe there was a wind. I don't know if that was what this was in this case, but it seemed staticky, there seemed to be something going on, I don't know, what is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I really don't know. That's interesting. That's never happened to me before. In my mission, we weren't allowed to keep the windows open because the through wind caused cancer. So
yeah, the different cultures. So your mission, people didn't keep the windows open because if the wind passes through, Now that's a spiritual thing too, though, because they thought that like the devil would give them cancer, right, or something to that
I don't
effect.
know that it was necessarily tied to the devil, but that in of itself, the through wind or the draft would cause medical issues, and
Medical
there
problems.
were there was even some missionaries that had been diagnosed with the through wind or the draft.
That's so funny. I love that. I love that so
Yeah,
much.
and
Just because
so,
people in Argentina were superstitious, or like not superstitious, but they thought that if you went out into the rain, you'd get sick. So
yeah,
yeah,
superstitious, I guess, everywhere a little bit, but yeah, I guess if there had been a sudden breeze with all the windows closed in in my mission, then yeah, it would have been something a little spectacular, I think.
yeah. But I think there might be truth to it. In some way, maybe because we sit here and like say, "Ha ha, it's so funny," But here we're talking about a spiritual experience where perhaps you know so maybe there's something
Mm,
to it. Maybe some folk wisdom that I don't know. Just a thought.
could be.
Hmm.
Yep.
Do you have any questions?
No, that's interesting. I just like, again, kind of one of those people that God was just
Just in the right place at the right time. It was
and innately
interesting.
aware of somebody's needs. So,
Yeah, it was interesting to me too, I guess, that we both came from very different religious backgrounds. She's very Catholic, we were very Mormon. She never converted. She was never baptized as far as I know. Maybe after we had left. But it just it bore testimony to me that God is willing to manifest himself to all of us, not just people of one
right.
denomination. I think that's important. Like,
Is not a specter of persons, right? Like
right, God is
he,
not a respecter of person. He's going to manifest himself to all of his children and in all religions too, I believe.
yeah, it doesn't matter what religion you are. So, believers, or I guess unbelievers as well, that God is aware of your situation and knows
Yeah.
what you need. And at that time, she needed, comfort from two people from a different faith who were able to give it to her.
Yep.
And, and maybe even, I mean, we wouldn't know what would have happened if he hadn't given the blessing, but maybe that was, some sort of power manifest that brought him home as well. So,
Yeah. She had been praying, of course, that he would be okay and that he would come home. So yeah, that was quite the experience. Just to hear, like, almost hear words. I don't know exactly how to describe it unless one has experienced it. But I think that it's important to be able to try to describe it because otherwise, people might not recognize it, or I don't know. Do you think I've got something here? Do you think that that's something that should be explained or talked about?
maybe I think at the very least it shows that God is still aware of everybody. Like,
Hmm.
um, even if it isn't some sort of manifestation or a miracle, like in of itself, it's a tender mercy that two missionaries were in a place that somebody needed them. You
Yeah,
know,
that's true. I do believe it was, something that she needed at that moment. And it's just curious because after this time, we never really were able to contact her again. Every time we'd pass by the house, she wouldn't be there. So it's kind of interesting that that happened, and then for some reason we were cut off, or we were not able to contact her again for whatever reason. And I'm just very curious to get what her take on it was. What was her thoughts on that?
yeah, be interesting to see her side of the story.
Yeah.
Maybe she remembers it as well. Like one time, these like two strange American boys came into my house and put their hands on my head and summoned my son home. You
Yes.
know,
Yes, and
like
that's something interesting too, because it wasn't like we summoned him home. Like he would have come home regardless of whether or not we had been there to give the blessing. You know, but it was just like God was saying, "I'm aware of what's going on."
mhm.
Which was interesting. So
I don't know the wordings. If you wrote it down correctly, seem like didn't you say he would come home now?
yes, like
Like
your son will come home
that's
now.
That seems, was it more of a statement to you or a command?
It was in command form, I believe, in
Well, if it's
Spanish.
command form, that seems, you know what I mean? Like,
It's weird. I don't know. Like,
but like for real, like if it's command form, that's coming from the mouth of God. I mean, why not?
yeah, which is weird because it's like the process is already it's already happening. It's like the process of time is like everything that needed to happen up until that point for him to arrive home had already happened. We just arrived at the right time to give the blessing at that right moment. I don't like God's time is so weird. It's just like it's all connected. It's like he knows the beginning from the end. You know, so interesting. So interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's everything. Can't think of anything else.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I don't have any follow-up questions.
All right.
So if anybody has any stories or wants to share a mission experience or miracle, you're more than welcome to get in contact with us. There's a link in the description you can click on, and that link takes you to a site that will ask some questions, general questions
It's a
about the
Google form.
experience.
If you have a story that you'd like to share with us, you guys out there in the audience from your mission, it doesn't matter how old you are or when you served your mission, we want to hear your story and your miracles, your spiritual experiences. We think that these are very important to document. So I'll leave a link in the description that will take you to our Google form. There you can fill out basic questions like your contact information, your name, what happened in this experience generally. You don't have to give all the details, just give us enough info. It has details such as, the date that this occurred and your mission companion at the time of the occurrence. Those questions aren't necessarily, required to be on our show, but we just like to have that information so that we can make sure that our experiences are as accurate as possible when we're recording this show. We want the experiences to be as truthful as possible and document the truth. Thank you for watching Rise Zion. Before you go, I have an important ask. Please make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Our goal is to help fortify people's faith by providing some empirical evidence of God's hand in their life. However, if people can't find our videos or our channel, then our mission isn't accomplished. By liking and subscribing, you'll be helping us in this important mission. Thank you again, and until next time, bye.